Throughout our 120 years, Ford has supported our nation's armed forces and honored their selfless service to our country. The Central Ohio Ford dealers are proud to continue this tradition by investing in the work of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum in Columbus. Together, we want to share the veterans' heroic stories and introduce a grateful nation to the faces behind our forces. Please join us monthly to hear inspiring educational stories from our veterans who have gone above and beyond their call to defend freedom around the world. The National Veterans Memorial and Museum and your Central Ohio Ford dealers. Together, we will never forget.
Okay, hey Matt, great to have you here at the National Veterans Memorial Museum and to be back with my great friend and mentor often once again. Take us back to the early days when you decided that you wanted to serve the country through military service.
So I came in 1984. It was, so I actually dropped out of high school in 10th grade and joined the Marines.
Yeah.
I'd intended to come in the Army first, but it was right after the invasion of Grenada. So it was very difficult to get into the Rangers, which is what I was trying to do because the Rangers had just made history in Grenada. 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines eventually. And I was a guard at a Navy base in Atsugi, Japan for 2 years. And it was a really great experience. I always like to tell everybody I'm really happy that I started in the Marines.
And then you transitioned to the Army when?
So in 1988, I came over to the Army. So I actually was out of the Marines for 3 days before I enlisted in the Army. Yeah. And I was trying to get into the Special Operations community. And at that time, the Marine Corps only had one force reconnaissance company, and they were at Camp Lejeune. And it was really difficult to get a tryout to even come. So I got out to switch over to the Army because I know they had a much larger special ops, force at that time.
Many people who are observing this, watching us today, they know that you and I have worked together, served together, and done a lot together, but and some don't. So describe what the Ranger Force is all about.
So the Modern Rangers started in the early 70s, and it was started by General Creighton Abrams, who wanted a ready force. It was right around the time that the Special Forces pulled off the Sante raid, and they had a long train up to get a raid force ready. And I think that was actually probably one of the reasons why. So they ginned up 2 battalions, 1st and 2nd Ranger battalions, and they were basically supposed to be elite infantry battalions, but to be ready to specialize in raids and that sort of thing, Ranger type skills, And that has been evolving since that time. So the Iranian hostage crisis in 1980, 79 and 80 was a big impetus to change it a little bit, started taking on some more special operations units. That's whenever, all the special ops worlds started working more closely with each other around that time. And the Rangers became more and more focused on special operations type missions throughout all that time. So I came in, when I got to the regiment, which was the Ranger Regiment, which was in 88, we were still basically elite airborne infantry battalions at that point. We spent our days, parachuting into a drop zone and then doing raids and ambushes out in the forest and, small unit operations. And that's over my time in the regiment so I was there, for 89 was when we invaded Panama. So I was in 1st Ranger Battalion for that. And then the next year after that was the first Gulf War, where I was one of the Rangers who went to the small contingent of Rangers who went over as part of the special operations package that supported some of the operations in Iraq. And throughout that time, we were evolving to become more and more of a special operations focused unit, less and less about being in the forest and more about being, modern raids.
There are several charters, but Abrams Charter launched us, and Matt and I served in the Ranger Regiment. I arrived in 86, and we served together there and then beyond. But one of the things in the Abrams Charter mentioned they would be the best in the world with their weapons in their hands, right? Tell me about that.
Well, so let me back up a step before that. So General McChrystal, when he took over 2nd Ranger Battalion, he wanted to reinvigorate the warrior spirit in the battalion And he knew that hand-to-hand combat training was a tool to that end.
Okay.
So he ordered us to do so. And I was coming back to 2nd Ranger Battalion at that time. I had switched from 1st Battalion. And I was training at a place called the Tacoma Judo Club. And whenever the first UFCs came along, I was training with those guys, and we were all trying to emulate what Hoist Gracie had been doing. And then I started training my squad, and they basically started beating all the guys in the platoon, and pretty soon we were training the platoon. So then we started beating all the guys in the company, and slowly took over the battalion. And so by the time General McChrystal moved to the Ranger Regiment to be the regimental headquarters, the regimental commander, we had an established program at 2nd Ranger Battalion.
At what point did you say to yourself, Matt, I bet I could pure fleet this across the Army?
I think I knew from the beginning that it was going to go across the Army. I knew from the time I was training my squad. I knew from before that I knew it, because it changes your life when you learn how to fight. So I was an airborne ranger, former Marine. I was in the high school football team, rode rodeo. I was a pretty tough guy. Learned how to fight, and it changed my life, right? Like, you can stand in front of any group of men and know that you could pretty much whip them all. It changes you.
It does.
And so that happened to me. And then as soon as that happened to me, I knew that I could give that gift to other people and that it would change them too. Mm-hmm. And then I knew from that time that this would go around the Army.
So you've transitioned in your life a few times. As you departed active duty and then continued on this mission in many ways, but also transitioned for new opportunities. What did you experience, and what advice would you give?
When you leave service, is that for many people, they lose their sense of mission. The Army gives you, the military gives you a sense of mission. It's an important job, and you're serving something larger than yourself, and it's obvious in everything you do and the whole atmosphere. And when you leave service, suddenly that can be missing, and you have to find some larger purpose like that, something that keeps you tracking, some sense of mission. And so it took me a while I was still on the mission to change the Army. All the jobs that I took, all the things I did, they were all still focused on how do we change the culture within the Army to make it be the warrior culture that we need it to be in order for us to win wars, But that expanded over, that's been quite some time ago, almost 20 years ago now. It's expanded over that time to be more than that. Now that mission is, how do we affect our culture? And I mean by that, our culture within the United States of America, and also our culture within our veteran community, and our culture within, other people who are serving, and even just random citizens at large. How do we give that gift of mission, that sense of serving something larger, back to people? Because we're sort of in a crisis a lot of people in the United States today, and so I think that's where it's led me around to be. How do we do that?
When you wrapped a black belt around me 9 years ago with Jacare, I asked you the next year, who am I supposed to roll with? You said the cool guys. In other words, if someone's going to be a jerk or mean to you, then don't get hurt. Rather, sustain how you can be the warrior, sustain how you can learn it every single time. Teach everyone, and even the jerks.
In that regard, I think it's important to understand about grappling is that it's actually just a larger metaphor for life. All the things we were talking about before, and that's another one as well. You know what happens in a gym where they scuff up the old guys? All the old guys leave. Mm-hmm. And then their culture doesn't have the benefit of all those people's experience, and they don't have them showing everybody, and the whole gym is weaker because of it, because they didn't have the right attitude. Yeah. And so that's those lessons last through everything we're doing.
So tell everyone where you work today and what you see in America's youth.
Well, I'm the director of hand-to-hand combat at the United States Military Academy at West Point. now. And so I don't have a picture of all of America's youth, but I have a picture of some of the finest young people in America. As we have a very, very good people coming to West Point now. It is definitely one of the most wonderful places that you could possibly work if you are a teacher. So at West Point, I'm a little bit famous, and the reason I'm famous is I'm the only one there who tells them the truth about what battle is really going to be like and about how terrible it is, right? And about the moral dilemmas that you're going to have to be, that are going to be forced upon you, and how sometimes they're not what you think they're going to be. You know what I mean? Like imagine the guys in Somalia, whenever the first person comes out in the street and they shot him, they didn't have enough rifles to go around, so they send another man to go out there and get it, so you shoot that guy. And so then they send an 8-year-old out. So how do you prep people for that? You know, so if you just think about it from the prophylactic side of how do we stop people from experiencing moral injuries? Well, we do that by, you know, there's a famous developmental psychologist named Keegan. Our program at West Point is called the West Point Leadership Development Program. It's all based upon this Keegan's stages of development. And one of them is self-authoring, right? So self-authoring is when you can look at yourself and sort of deconstruct your morals and know why you have them. You know what I mean? Because when you're at that stage, you can be like, okay, well, you know, the preacher I had when I was 15 years old, he'd never been to battle. And so he doesn't actually have any idea. And, you know, young people who have just a little bit of combat experience, they get hypersensitive to threats, right? And they're like this, right? Okay, so that's a symptom of PTSD, right? But it's only an adaptation to the war zone. It's only a maladaptation when you get back to the States and it's not dangerous anymore, but your brain has rewired itself so that you're that guy, right? Okay, there's another thing is that's not the symptom that old guys get. You can't live like that for 30 years. So whenever you have been a lot of sketchy situations, pretty soon you get lackadaisical. It's like, I can't pay attention to my bills. For real, right? Like I can't, because I don't care, right? So that's a symptom of a lot of combat, right? Like,
tell me your thoughts on post-traumatic growth.
So if the audience have a master's degree in combat psychology, and my undergraduate is in natural sciences, so I have to take a evolutionary perspective on combat psychology. And what I would say is that whenever traumatic experiences happen to people, how you would process that, you have to be able to process it in order to get on with your life, in order to be able to continue on as a soldier on the battlefield, in order to be able to come back and, you know, raise your children and hold down a regular job. And so you have to be able to process those experiences. And post-traumatic growth is what it looks like when you process them well. It's like, you know, whenever you heal the wound in such a way that it's stronger. And I would say, you know, I would say that's the goal that we all have. It's difficult based upon where you start and what kind of trauma it is. But it's what we're working towards.
Why is it that guys who study underneath us say, I would have killed myself if it wasn't for this jiu-jitsu, or even the fly casting next door? But why?
Here's an important lesson, right? So this is a good lesson for everybody. So there's a part of psychology called positive psychology, and they've identified there are basically 3 methods, if you will, of achieving genuine happiness. So one of those methods is just savoring the moment. You know, you're out on a beautiful, you know, meal, great glass of wine, somebody you love with you, or it's a beautiful sunset, you know, realizing that this is a beautiful moment right now and seeing it as like me and you hear old friends talking, you know, like it's wonderful, right? Like savoring the moment is a key thing. Another one is flow state. So flow state is like when you're skydiving, you know, when you're coming out of that plane, you're skydiving, you are not thinking about your bills, right? It's not entering your mind, right? And so And so grappling gives you that. Like when you're rolling in ground grappling, or you're boxing, or you're, something like that, it gives you flow state. So let me explain what flow state is a little bit better. Okay, so imagine what separates human beings from the rest of the animal kingdom is that we're self-aware. And so since we're self-aware, we know that someday we're going to die. And so what that gives us is this superpower that we can prepare for the future. Okay, we don't eat all the corn we have. We need to keep some of it so we can have corn next year. So the unfortunate thing is the way that operates is through anxiety. We're nervous about starving next year. That's why we kept the corn, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're in flow state, it's like going back to the animal kingdom. You are living the way animals live on the, it's from moment to moment, thinking about this is going on right here, and therefore you don't have any anxiety whenever you're doing that. Mm-hmm. So here's an important thing to note, though, is that both of those two ways, well, I should mention also that the flow state can be positive or negative. The thing is that those two ways, savoring and flow state, the problem with them both is that they're ephemeral. When you're through with that meal, you go home, you're still worried about paying the rent this month. When you get off that skydive or you get off the mat, you're going to have a endorphin high for a while because you feel great. It's just like when you work out. But pretty soon you're going to have to be worried about paying your bills again. And so this is why I mentioned, like, the third method is having a sense of mission. So if you have a sense of mission, then you can see your way through challenges of life. Mm-hmm. This is where the idea of the bulls of the herd comes in. We train ourselves in the same ways that we were. That way, the day we left the Army, it doesn't matter if you were in the Army for 2 years or if you were in the Army for 32 years. When you left the Army, there's the tendency for that sense of mission to go away, but it shouldn't go away. You're still the same person. You still have the same mission. And your mission is to make the people around you safer so that we can have a better society. And that sense of mission, that's what gets you up. That's what makes you keep going. The bulls of the herd protect the herd because they love the herd, and we protect each other, and we protect those around us, and we train to that end. I'm stronger.
As when I'm in flow state, or when I'm, and my mission is awesome. 3rd Ranger Battalion, Bravo Company, Charlie Airborne, the 11th Regiment, DCG, A&T in Iraq, CG of MCOM. When I'm with my people, and when I have a mission, and I have challenges that I want to crush, it's awesome. And then, and it is for all of the men and women that we love. I sort of view it as I'm on rung number 9 of a ladder right then. And then as we transition out, if we can't find the mission, as you said, then maybe I go to 7, and then I'm looking for a job, and I get a job, but it's not worthy. It's people don't care about each other. I moved to 6 or 5. And then 1 or 2 other things happen that get me down in 2 or 3. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see it along those lines?
Similar. So first, I would say that it's important to understand that suicide is an idea pathogen. And what I mean by that is it spreads. And if when somebody commits suicide, there are more suicides around them often.
Yes.
So, for example, efforts in suicide prevention often backfire because you're giving people the idea, right? So the best idea on that regard is to make your efforts where it's not obvious what you're trying to accomplish. And the thing about the rungs you were saying is because we lose track of, we don't overtly talk about the mission in ways that we probably should if we want people to stay on mission. You know what I mean? When we lose comrades, what we're really losing is their contribution. We miss their company, right? But if we missed it enough, we would have been around them more and they would have felt better about it. Okay, but we also missed their contribution. It's like I said, if you are on mission, when you're sitting down in a fast food restaurant, you're performing your mission. You're the guardian angel of that group of people that you're sitting around.
I know I am. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, they'll say, so you sit there, why? You know, so I can see what's...
Yeah. And you know, and that doesn't go away, and it doesn't depend upon your circumstances, and it doesn't matter how low things get for you. You're still making a contribution. And you know, when you're in the service, we get used to this luxury of having our job be our mission. Like it gives us the mission. But that's not what most people's mission is. Most people have jobs that they don't necessarily like. But they're going to those jobs so that they can raise their children. There's your sense of mission. You know, they're going to those jobs because people count on them. And so we have that. And we have that in spades. We have it with each other. We have it with the people around us. We have a mission to protect the people around us. We have a mission to make our society stronger and better. We have a mission to make sure that, you know, the less fortunate are taken care of. We have a mission and if we lose track of that, you lose track of that because you start getting inside yourself. So you got to get outside of yourself and start paying attention to what you can do to make it better, you know.
If we go 7 years ahead and look in the rearview mirror, what has happened because of Mount Larsen?
So my mission is still to change the culture of the Army, and through it now the culture of the nation. First, the culture of the Army. We are still along the path of making it where every soldier is expected to know how to fight, to be respected as a soldier. And until we get to that point, we won't really have the warrior culture that we need. And by warrior culture, I mean, in a proper warrior culture, we make demands upon each other. You know, I demand that you be as strong as you can be because you might have to carry me off the objective, and I'm big. You know, I demand that you be a good fighter. I demand that you have good marksmanship skills. I demand that you know first aid. I demand that you can do land nav. We make demands of each other. But then we also, we help each other. If somebody in our unit doesn't meet one of those demands, they're crying out for leadership and comradeship. They need us to help them get up to the standard. That's our job, because that weakest link, we can't just discard them. We've got to strengthen them, right? So that's what it's all about within the Army. Now, take that into how it translates into, you know, our veteran community, which is directly affected, and all the people that they can affect, which is indirectly, and that's the rest of the nation. And so what I would like to see different is I would like to see that sense of mission, that binding together of the herd, you know, so that we start to feel like, you know, we protect each other. We have that sense of mission throughout our community and throughout each other. This is what we're about. You know, it's like, if you ever look at any conflict, the conflicts are always us and them, right? We are the good guys and they are the bad guys. And so one really simple question to ask people is, who is your we? You know, when you say we do this, who do you mean? You know, so in my opinion, we is from a soldier's perspective, it starts with we, my family, we, my platoon, we, my battalion, we, the Army, we, the nation, we, you know, so I think that what we need to work on is who's our we, right? And that's what binding us together as a force and as a nation and as a citizenry. I think that's that's hopefully what I can change or affect.
Yeah, well, we are with you on that one, Matt. And we at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum are running our programs to impact lives, to collect dots, collect the we, and connect the we, and then find a way to say yes to amazing ideas. Well, if people want to learn more about you, Matt, or if they want to learn more about that which you've studied and written, where would you have them go to check it out?
So on the mission of like trying to expand this outside of the Army, the group of black belts who created the Army Combatives Program, including yourself, as you know, created a sort of a guild of black belts, and the idea is to catalyze people to do the right kind of training and to push them in the direction that those people that have chartered. And so that we have a website called the www.combativesuniversity.org, and it's basically like a series of classes that you sign up for, and in those classes you build a resume of your deeds and prove that you have the skills in order to get promoted within the combatives belt system. Mm-hmm. Well, that's my major thing I'm working on.
So what an awesome opportunity to sit with my friend again and hear, learn, listen, and for all of you as well. We're the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, and inspiring stories of service are fun to tell, not hard to find. Matt, always amazing to be with you. We went to the airport and linked up, and as it is with dear friends, it's like, yeah, we were together yesterday, and sorry I'm 10 minutes late today, sort of thing. And God bless you, and thanks for being with us, and so much more. There's a lot for us to do, but we always do these things together. So.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike.
Always.
Let's get on the mats.
Let's do it.
Throughout our 120 years, Ford has supported our nation's armed forces and honored their selfless service to our country. The Central Ohio Ford dealers are proud to continue this tradition by investing in the work of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum in Columbus. Together, we want to share the veterans' heroic stories and introduce a grateful nation to the faces behind our forces. Please join us monthly to hear inspiring educational stories from our veterans who have gone above and beyond their call to defend freedom around the world. The National Veterans Memorial and Museum and your Central Ohio Ford dealers. Together, we will never forget.